Welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving into the absolutely fascinating, hyper-accelerated transformation of the United Arab Emirates. We're going to unpack exactly how a quiet stretch of desert literally transformed into one of the most influential, bustling global hubs on the planet.
All right, let's kick things off with a truly staggering number. 4. Just 4 decades. That is all it took for this region to go from sleepy pearling and fishing towns to a sprawling global metropolis. I mean, to put that into perspective for a second, while other major world cities took centuries to build out their infrastructure and global footprint, the UAE managed to pull off a modern economic miracle in the span of a single generation. It's wild.
You know, the UAE is often viewed through the lens of its two most famous emirates, and they really act as these dual engines driving the whole thing. On one side, you have Abu Dhabi. They wield immense oil-fueled wealth, massive sovereign funds, and deeply rooted global power. It's the real heavyweight of the federation. Then on the other side is its alter ego, Dubai, which serves as this cosmopolitan, bustling commercial air bridge linking the East and the West. Together, they create this highly effective, complementary dynamic. But to really understand this economic miracle, we need to quickly look back at the deep roots of the Arabian Peninsula.
Section 1. From Desert to Metropolis. A lot of people think this place just sprang up overnight, but thousands of years of history tell a different story. We see evidence of Chalcolithic and Bronze Age settlements stretching all the way back to 5000 BC. Fast forward a bit to the 1500s, and you find Portuguese forces building naval forts right there to secure their maritime trade routes. Then, crucially, in 1820, an anti-piracy agreement was signed with the British. That established a protectorate relationship that defined the region's borders for over a century, right up until the sudden formation of the UAE in 1971.
Woven throughout all of this history, though, is the Bedouin way of life. For millennia, surviving in this incredibly harsh desert meant relying entirely on an adaptable, nomadic existence. These mobile tribes and clans practice pastoralism, emphasizing kinship and herding in some really extreme climatic conditions. And this wasn't just how they survived. It forged a distinct cultural identity and social structure that deeply shaped the early culture, the alliances, and honestly, even the modern borders of the Emirates. That ancient foundation absolutely set the stage for the massive shift coming in the 20th century.
Section 2. Oil and Unification.
Okay, the year 1971. This is everything here. It marks the pivotal moment when British forces completely withdrew from the Gulf. This sudden exit left a massive power vacuum, and the UAE basically achieved independence by default. The local rulers, led by Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan of Abu Dhabi, were suddenly staring down a very urgent imperative: either unite right now or face complete instability.
But forming the UAE was definitely not a sure thing. When the British announced they were out, they essentially told the local rulers that ongoing protection was only on the table if at least 5 states formed a federation. This forced everyone to the table. They had to somehow overcome deep territorial disputes and totally uncoordinated economies. But they did it. 7 distinct emirates officially united into a single federal nation-state, beating the odds of political division that had doomed similar setups elsewhere. And once they unified, well, the discovery of massive commercial oil reserves triggered an economic explosion unlike anything they'd ever seen.
Section 3. Beyond the oil boom. But with that boom came a really critical vulnerability for the young nation. Historically, oil was making up nearly 42% of their gross domestic product, and even crazier, over 75% of all government revenues. The country's entire economy was precariously dangling on a single, highly volatile resource. It's what's known as a classic lend-share state dilemma.
The leadership realized pretty fast that this was just not sustainable. To secure their future against inevitable global financial crises and oil price drops, diversifying the economy wasn't just a good idea, it was absolutely essential. So they aggressively pivoted. They started building a knowledge-based economy, pouring huge, massive investments into sectors like telecommunications, software, international finance, and tourism.
And here is a super surprising, just fantastic example of this diversification outside of the usual high-tech stuff. 20,000. That is the amount of dates, in tons, that Abu Dhabi alone produces every single year. That represents about 3% of the entire world's share. I mean, it's a real testament to how aggressively they are pushing agricultural and alternative sectors right alongside their tech and finance booms.
So all of this brings us to a crucial, really the overarching question for our explainer today. Can the UAE successfully survive and actually thrive beyond the era of oil? How exactly is this young, rapidly growing federation making sure it stays relevant in a post-oil world? Well, the answer to that isn't just about diverse economics. It's about a very specific global strategy. Section 4. Culture and soft power.
By leveraging its vast wealth, the UAE has made cultural diplomacy a huge cornerstone of its foreign policy. Basically, this is the strategic use of cultural assets to encourage international relations and understanding. For the UAE, it's a very calculated, high-stakes move. They are actively purchasing and cultivating global legitimacy, aiming to gain serious clout and influence across Arab, Asian, African, and Western societies.
To actually execute that strategy, the nation is bankrolling an ongoing cultural renaissance. They're funding massive expansions like the Zayed National Museum, developing the Dubai Museum Fort, and hosting these incredibly high-profile international biennial exhibitions. By creating the Abu Dhabi Arts and Culture Authority, they are deliberately blending local, traditional architecture with major, high-stakes international art commissions. It's a masterclass in projecting soft power globally. But, of course, this meteoric rise, building a modern state, pivoting the economy, and projecting all this cultural power, it definitely hasn't come with some heavy costs.
Section 5. The Modern Balancing Act.
Constructing megaprojects literally in the blink of an eye has introduced some really severe environmental strains on what used to be pristine desert and coastal systems. For instance, building those famous artificial offshore islands, that has severely strained fragile creek and coastal ecosystems. The rapid urban expansion has led to unprecedented alterations of the inland desert, and massive industrial growth has brought huge, really complex challenges when it comes to managing solid waste and sewage. The environmental toll of growing this fast is just immense.
And the hurdles go way beyond the environment. The UAE is situated in a pretty awkward geographic spot, completely surrounded by volatile neighbors, meaning they constantly have to navigate regional geopolitical hotspots like Iran and Iraq. Internally, they're not just dealing with strained environmental resources, but an extreme over-reliance on foreign investment and an expatriate labor force that actually vastly outnumbers their local citizens. Plus, to keep up its critical reputation for absolute stability, the state has had to heavily invest in advanced military procurement just to deter external threats. It's a constant, incredibly delicate balancing act.
I want to leave you with this final, really thought-provoking quote from our source material. The UAE is still a piece of the world puzzle and highly vulnerable to upsets far beyond its immediate regions. It really makes you wonder, right? Despite its unbelievable wealth, staggering modernization, and brilliant cultural diplomacy, can a maturing state that is so deeply entangled in the unpredictable web of global politics ever truly insulate itself from the chaotic world around it? That is going to be the ultimate test for the United Arab Emirates over its next 4 decades.